Hello, this is Preach, and welcome back to my kitchen table. We appreciate you watching this video and beginning to hopefully gain some insight behind the book we wrote entitled You Are a Picker. I hope you've been enjoying the book, and I hope you've been grabbing a hold of the truths that's inside of You Are a Picker. The next three videos have to do with what I call the triple threshold of intimacy. Now, there's one cool thing about having a theory, and that is if you have your own theory, you can put in it what you want, and that's kind of what I have done here with this. This is the triple threshold of intimacy. It is my theory and my theory only. Do I have science to back it up? No, I do not. This is a theory. This is something that I think, something I really feel like that the Lord has begun to impress upon me, and so I'd like to share it with you. When you look at the triple threshold of his intimacy, the first threshold is that little board that goes at underneath your door. When you go into a room, there's usually what they call a threshold, or something that your door slides up on to kind of seal it, so to speak, especially like an outside door. It'll seal it to keep the cold or the heat from sliding underneath that door. You'll also see them going into most every room of your house. You'll have a little, what was called a threshold, or a little board that goes across there to kind of separate the two different rooms. And that threshold is what, whenever I look at this, I'm saying there are three thresholds that have to be satisfied before you can have a healthy, intimate relationship. I didn't say before you could have a sexual encounter. I said before you could have a healthy, intimate relationship. There is a difference between intimacy and sex. There just is. Some of you may say, well, they're the same thing. No, it has to do with the feelings you have. It has to do with what's going inside of you, not what's going on with you. It has to do with your emotions that changes it from just an animal action to something that is intimate, something that you have shared with your partner. And so to get to these quickly, there's three what I call thresholds for a healthy, intimate relationship. And the very first one is just physical. You have to be physically mature in order to be ready to have an intimate relationship. If sex is introduced before this physical threshold has been crossed, it will usually bring some type of damage with it, some type of injury. There are a couple of examples that I could. You had to pardon me if this seems like I'm having a little trouble grasping for my words, because this one is one that I'm having a little trouble grasping for words, and just bear with me, okay? If sex is introduced before the body has been physically mature enough to receive some type of penetration, then there's usually damage that goes along with this. Now, one of them examples I use in the book about a young lady who we have counseled with, who was repeatedly raped by an uncle at a very young age. Somewhere around the age of 14, 15 years old, she had so much scar tissue that had built up that the normal flow from her body was unable to happen. The scar tissue was so built up that doctors had to go in and remove all of the scar tissue in order for the normal activities of her body to take place. This had been backing up and backing up and backing up, and the doctors just had to go in and physically remove the scar tissue. After doing so, then everything was fine and dandy, and she went on. However, because of all of the scar tissue and because of the tearing and because of everything that happened to her at this very early age, she was unable to carry a child to full term after several miscarriages. And the doctors finally began to just tell her, look, because of we had to remove the scar tissue because of all of the damage that was done at this when you were a child, you are not going to be able to carry a baby full term. I don't know for sure, but I'm trying to go from memory because it's been a while since I talked to her, but it seemed like it was like 6 months was the longest. They tried everything. They tried sewing her cervix closed, but it did not help. They tried everything they knew to do, but they could not help her carry a child to full maturity and full gestation period where she could have a child. So this uncle, who had raped her repeatedly and caused all of the damage, for his short-term enjoyment, he forced upon her a lifetime of barrenness. He gave her a life sentence of not being able to bear a child because of what he had done to her, because he put his own desires above everything else, and because of that, it caused problems for her in her life. Another young lady that had come to us in counsel, actually she didn't come, but her mother had come to us in counsel, had been raped at a very early age and by a family member, and it had so torn her private area that she had to have reconstructive surgery to reconstruct everything because it was so damaged. And whenever that you think about this for just a moment, you have to kind of come back to and understand that yes, there has to be some physical maturity. I'm going to tell you, most of the time, for intimacy to be healthy, you have to be all the way through puberty. And matter of fact, most people who are emotionally ready for intimacy are, late teens, early 20s for sure. Now, you may have some young ladies who are younger than that who have so fell in love, and they're just so adorable and so falling in love with the dream of their life, their soulmate, at 12. They're not emotionally ready. They're not emotionally. Can they physically? Yeah, they can physically have a sexual relationship, but emotionally they're not ready for that. Although they think they are, they're not ready for that. They're not ready for the things that can develop because of that. Not all young men at that age, but I'm going to say a great majority of the young men at that age, we're talking 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, they are more interested in putting a notch on their belt. Some may really and truly have feelings, fall in love. I'm going to say a puppy love, because at that age you really still do not know what love is all about. You still do not know exactly what all of the things that is associated with love. I didn't get married. Mom and I got married when we were 18 years old. And I'm telling you now, at 60, I'm telling you, we were too young to get married at the time. Of course, it was in the 70s, 1977. And so you can tell we've been together for a while. And so looking back, and ladies, again, I apologize if I'm stuttering and stammering more than usual. I didn't prepare myself totally for the difficulty in sharing this part. And I apologize if I'm stumbling just a little bit and searching for words. I don't mean to be offensive. I don't mean to come across as crude or rude or ugly or off color, but I do need to deal with this particular process because so many have had this particular threshold forced upon them before they were ready. So many have had this particular threshold brought to them. Maybe they thought they were ready. Maybe they thought that it was exactly what they wanted to do, but maybe not really what they were really ready for. And so they have to cross this threshold of physical development. Otherwise, it is not going to just be a little painful. I know there is some pain that goes along with the tearing of the hymen, but whenever that young ladies are not fully developed and not fully ready physically, it begins to really do a lot of damage, like I talked about before, either in a reconstructive, or it could cause some scarring, or it could cause some emotional scars. And sometimes emotional scars are a whole lot harder to get rid of than physical scars. As you begin to go through your life, you know that this is what I'm saying here is true. Emotionally, you can deal with something physically, but emotional scars sometimes last a lifetime. A physical scar, here again, I go back to a scar I have on my arm. Whenever that the scar is there, I can look and say, yes, I was hurt at one time, but I'm healed now. It doesn't affect me now. I go on about my life now. I don't even think about it unless I look down and see it, or I want to use it as an illustration in a message or a video. I don't even think about that. But an emotional scar is below the surface where no one can see it. And that emotional scar that is below the surface will have hurts that reoccur maybe several times a day, several times a week, maybe even years down the road. I've talked to ladies who their abuse happened decades ago, but yet it's still just like it happened this morning. It's just like it happened 15 minutes ago. That emotional scar is still there. And once again, I talk about Jesus came to bind up the bruised. And yes, you have been bruised. And because you have been bruised, and because you have been hurt, Jesus come to bind that up. Nobody can see your bruises. Nobody can see the emotional hurts that are there. And therefore they can't really what you call may try to be sympathetic, and they may try to be may try to understand, but nobody can understand your hurt like you. Nobody can grab a hold of what happened quite like you can. And so this physical development has to take place first off. It has to take place first off. Once the physical part has happened, once you have been physically, you have matured physically, then you can begin to look at the other aspects or the other thresholds that you have to cross before an intimate relationship can be healthy, where you can actually have an intimate relationship and begin to have a caring, intimate relationship. Let us pray. Hey, Lord, as I come before you, I thank you and praise you for your many blessings. Lord, I worship you because of who you are. Lord, I thank you for my friends that are watching today. And I ask you in the precious name of Jesus to take these simple words, Lord, and try to help them apply them to their heart and to their life. Lord, I just ask you to bring a healing, a physical healing. Bring an emotional and spiritual healing to these ladies who are watching today. And Master, I'm going to give you the praise for this in Jesus' precious name. Amen, amen, amen. I know this is probably the shortest video in this series that we do, It doesn't take me long to go ahead and go over the things that I wanted to touch base with you on. As a matter of fact, I started to maybe join a couple of videos together to lengthen them, but anyways, once again, quit laughing at me because I'm having trouble finding the proper words to use. I feel sorry for myself, okay? But anyways, thank you for joining me today. Be with us next time as we begin to look at the second threshold of intimacy, and that is trust. We'll look at trust next time. Hey, your leader there will probably have some discussion questions for you, but I'm just going to throw out a couple of questions on my own. What would you say are your physical and psychological injuries that have happened to you? What happened to you? What would you say was your physical injuries? What would you say was your psychological injuries that happened to you? Also, how can you be released from your captivity? Because a whole lot of the times, these specific abuses begins to hold you captive. And what can you do to try to get yourself released from being held captive? One more, and like I said, your leader will probably have some, or maybe some of you ladies have some things that you would like to discuss. But here's another one for you. What is one of the ways you can tear down the strongholds you have set up in your captivity? We're going to deal with strongholds in a later video, which will probably be the longest one that we do. But whenever you have a lot of these things happen to you, you set up these strongholds and hold yourself captive. And you know, it's hard for you to allow someone in for an intimate encounter. I'm not talking just about a sexual encounter. I'm talking about an intimate encounter where you begin to open yourself up to someone else. Anyways, we're going to get together at my kitchen table again and talk about some of these things, but be ready as we look at the very next one, the next threshold. Until we get together again, may God richly bless you.